Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any new videos. And remember to gently tap the like button, because it really helps the algorithm find more people who love science and math as much as you do. Being smart is supposed to be a good thing, right? You know, we all want our kids to be smart. We celebrate smart people in movies. There are even some studies suggesting that being smart can make you happy. But if you are like me, sometimes being smart feels less like a blessing and more like a curse. Sometimes it makes life more complicated than it needs to be. And sometimes it just sucks. Let me explain. When I was in school, I used to get really upset because I wasn't smarter than other kids. I mean, I did pretty well in most subjects, but there were always a few students who seemed to be smarter than me. They got all the answers right. They would finish their homework first and they could answer any question the teacher had for them. Even worse, they made it look easy, as if getting straight A's was nothing special. It wasn't until I went to college that I realized they weren't necessarily smarter. They were better at taking tests. And here's what I mean by that. If you think about IQ tests, you might think of something like this. You know, how many questions can you get right in a row before you start losing points? What's the highest score anyone has ever gotten? You can actually take an online test. That's not how IQ works. Here's how it works. You are presented with a number of tasks. For example, solving arithmetic problems, verbal analogies, spatial visualization, and others. You are not competing against yourself or somebody else. You are competing against a set of norms depending on your age. So let's say you do above average on the verbal analogies section. That doesn't mean you scored higher than somebody else. It means you've scored better than roughly 2/3 of people in the norm group in your age range. To put it simply, intelligence isn't about answering more questions correctly. It's about understanding concepts. When you enter college, there are still smart kids, but now they are competing with each other to get into graduate school. Let's take medical school, for example. If you're in the top half of your class, you have a decent shot at getting into med school. But if you're in the bottom half, even if you're doing better than the national average, you probably won't get in. This competition starts early too. Even kids as young as 4 years old are ranked against each other based on standardized test scores. And this ranking becomes increasingly important as they grow up. It seems that American culture puts a lot of emphasis on intelligence. And I guess that is true of many countries. But why? Why does being smart matter so much? Well, it's because we live in a world that demands a lot from us. In order to succeed, you need to be smart. Companies hire the smartest people they can find. Politicians want to be smart. Everyone wants to be smart. But I think there's another reason why we place such a high value on intelligence. The fact that intelligence is limited. Unlike effort, unlike empathy, unlike kindness, the amount of intelligence you have is finite. You can improve it to some extent, but it's mostly fixed. Because of that, intelligence is very often used as a currency to compete against each other, to rank people in some kind of hierarchy. If you are smarter, then you are better. Okay, so what's the problem? Well, when you start thinking of intelligence as a currency, then people who are less fortunate become liabilities. In other words, stupid people. You see, Americans spend around $100 billion every year to boost the intelligence of gifted children, but not nearly enough to help people with learning disabilities. And if you are one of these people, that's where it hurts. I am lucky, if you will, because I am considered smart. Most of the time I can figure things out by myself, but there are those times when it would be nice to have somebody help me. Maybe I struggle to understand something, or maybe I just don't care enough to learn something. For example, when I started driver's education, I already knew how to drive. I didn't exactly hide it either, but instead of letting me go earlier, the instructor kept testing me over and over again until I got bored and finished the course. Was that fair? No, of course not. But that's not his fault. He didn't design the system. I'm just a cog in the machine, and the machine rarely makes exceptions. You know what else is difficult for smart people? Being wrong. Not only does it hurt our ego, but it also contradicts our intuition. Because smart people are so used to being right, they feel compelled to justify their position, to convince themselves that they know what they're talking about. But it turns out that intelligent people are more likely to be wrong. Here's why. Smart people tend to think they know more than they actually do. A study published in 2013 found that people with high IQs were less accurate at estimating the size of their own knowledge gap. In other words, smart people think they know more than they actually do. But it's okay for smart people to be wrong. After all, nobody knows everything. But it is not okay for stupid people to be wrong, because they already know less than smart people. This is why smart people can have trouble admitting they are wrong. And it's also why stupid people have an advantage. Now, before you call me out on this, Hear me out. Stupid people aren't stupid all the time. They just happen to be less wrong. I'll give you an example. Do you know why construction workers are less likely to fall for scams? Because they've seen enough projects to know how long things should take and how much they should cost. Their intelligence protects them from getting scammed. Of course, this doesn't mean they are immune, but it helps. On the other hand, smart people are more vulnerable. Take Bernie Madoff, for example. He defrauded investors out of an estimated $65 billion. His victims included some of the wealthiest and best educated people in the country. The same goes for Enron CEO Kenneth Lay. He pulled off one of the largest accounting scandals in US history. These guys were smart, but they were so used to being right, so used to beating the market, that they couldn't accept that they might be wrong. This doesn't mean stupid people never win. They absolutely do. But if stupid people are wrong, no one really cares. If smart people are wrong, it's a big deal. It's like if you give a spoon to a baby, the baby might not eat the soup properly. It's okay, because that's what babies do. But if you give a fork to a grown man and he can't eat, people start to notice. Another disadvantage of being smart is that you are more easily bored. A kid might think blowing bubbles is the coolest thing in the world. To an adult, it's pretty entertaining. But if you are smart, you probably think blowing bubbles is kind of pointless. You have to admit that there is some truth to this. I mean, look at kids. They find entertainment in the simplest things. How many hours do you think this kid spent playing with a ball? Now look at an adult. I bet you wouldn't catch him playing with a ball unless he was paid to. Adults are smart, and we know there are more important things to do. So in a way, we outgrow our ability to be entertained by simple things. But I think the worst part about being smart is that it can make you lonely. Here's why. I read somewhere that you should untalk about 3 topics with people you do want know very well: politics, religion, and money. But I think intelligence is right up there with those 3. Because when you bring up the subject of intelligence, it reveals a lot of insecurity. If you are less intelligent, you feel threatened. And if you are more intelligent, you feel superior. And neither of those feelings promotes meaningful conversations. So, is intelligence a blessing or a curse? Well, like most things in life, it depends. Yes, being smart helps you excel academically. It can help you financially. But intelligence comes at a cost. And as a society, I don't think we do enough to help the people who pay that cost. Sure, we praise the child geniuses and we marvel at their abilities, but how much attention do we give to the kids who are struggling? The kids who are bored, the kids who are falling behind, the kids who need help. You know what? Let's stop celebrating intelligence altogether. Instead, let's celebrate curiosity. Let's celebrate kindness. Let's celebrate effort. Those are the things that really matter. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, check out this playlist. If you can support the channel, I'd really appreciate it. All the best, and see you next time.